Anderson heaving one down the sideline, and he's got Cass Allen over the top. Big side, down the sideline. Touchdown. His signature move and his signature performance. Allen, deep ball one more time. 58 yards this time.
You're listening to the Bruin Bible. This is your host, Will Decker, bringing you UCLA football content all throughout the year for LA Football Network.
Up, LAFB fans, you are listening to the Bruin Bible right now, but we want to bring to you our sponsor for the show. It's Bet Online. Our partners at Bet Online continue to be the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. Find all of the latest odds, news, and sports developments, including this year's Wimbledon finals. I know our guy Madman will be all over that. The big tennis fan of the bunch. Major League Baseball, Dodgers in the midst of a big-time season, highest payroll in the league, 3 MVPs in the lineup. Can they figure it out? The latest fighting news, a huge MMA fight coming up this weekend for the UFC, and even next season's early NFL futures. I know you guys will be hammering the Rams and Chargers overs on the futures for next season. Head to our website to use your mobile device to sign up today to receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code LAFB to get the bonus and get into the action. Bet Online, where the game starts. What is up, and welcome to a brand new edition of the Bruin Bible. I am so stoked today. We got one of the national college football hosts of his own show, Crain and Company, in the house. My man Jay Crain joins us again. And I just want to give him a huge shout out. He came on our show last year when we didn't have a lot of listeners. A lot has changed since then, so we're very, very excited to talk some ball with Mr. Crain himself. Anything better than college football around the corner, Jake?
Man, number one, I appreciate you having me on. I had a blast last year, man. Really excited to see you guys grow. Y'all deserve it, man. Y'all grind. Y'all put in the work, and you're knowledgeable, man. I always enjoy your work. And, dude, it's the greatest time of year. You know, I will say – March Madness is still my favorite postseason event of all time. But, dude, nothing beats college football. I don't care what anybody says. I'll die on that hill.
College football is one of the greatest things ever because it occurs on a Saturday, man.
Yes.
Like Sunday football, as much as I love it, I got to wake up and go to the office the next day. With Saturday, you can have a night out. You can be watching, especially where are you located? Like South?
I'm in Nashville. We're in Nashville now since we moved to the Daily Wire, man. It's great.
Love it, dude. I lived in Memphis for a little while, so I'm familiar with the area, know that spot. But Jake was so kind enough to join us today. As we're going to be talking about the Pac-12, I've got to pick his head about some of the, national news going on as well. We're going to get to that towards the end of the show. But we got to start with the UCLA Bruins. And, Jake, you went in depth on your show. You picked each Pac-12 team's record within conference, how they're going to finish. UCLA is at 6-3, and I think that's a fair kind of assessment. I have them at 7-2 myself. I think they're going to win one of those big three matchups, whether it's USC, Oregon, or Utah. But I'd like to hear your take on kind of what made UCLA a team that was going to finish there in your head.
Well, I think Dorian Thompson-Robinson, the quarterback's always going to be the key. I never really worry about Chip Kelly's offense. You saw what they were able to do last year. Pretty decently balanced in the run game and the pass game. I mean, Charbonnet, the transfer from Michigan, he's an NFL back. Reminds me a lot of James Conner. I think they got a lot of similarities. You saw what they were able to do to LSU. Even though Dorian Thompson-Robinson, I think him and KJ Jefferson, probably the Arkansas quarterback, were the two, and Hendon Hooker, obviously, when he got in there, were three of the quarterbacks that made a big jump last year, especially toward the end. And I know Dorian, DTR finished with 21 touchdowns, I believe, 6 interceptions. It was a pretty good mark. I still feel like he got away with some. He got away with a lot. Yeah. But again, Chip Kelly's offense, the balance there, he understands it. I'll never worry about that. I think the offensive line is going to be fine. It's going to come down to the defense for me. And I know, again, you look in the Pac-12, and, sometimes I think there is a common misconception a little bit with the Pac-12. I think the defenses, especially up front, are a little more physical than what people give them credit for. But I feel like in those big three, Utah, to me, I haven't won the Pac-12. I know we're going to get there. I'm not trying to jump the shark here. I think they're so well coached in all three phases. They're so good up front. Cam Rising's a rising star, pun intended there. And again, they're deep and they're talented. USC, I know we'll get to them. I just feel like UCLA, again, on defense, from a depth standpoint, it worries me a little bit. I think you're going to see them have some leads early in those games, especially with the dual threat ability of Dorian Thompson-Robinson and his ability to extend the play outside the pocket. I just don't know if the amount of depth on defense is going to be there as we go through the season. Because like I tell people who, think the SEC is a one-off or a two-off with Alabama and Georgia, that's not the hardest part of coaching. I wish it was that easy. I wish it was, hey, you know what? We just got to beat UCLA, and we just got to beat USC, or we just got to beat Bama, or we just got to beat Georgia, or we just got to beat Ohio State, or we just got to beat Michigan. It doesn't work like that. College football is a battle of attrition. It's those 3 to 4 to 5 week stretches where you don't have a bye, you play 2 teams good on the road, and that's where the depth comes in. Because not to be too long-winded, it's not about your first 22. It's about your first 60. It's not about your first 5 offensive linemen. Do you go 7 or 8 deep? How many of those guys are swing guys? So when I look at UCLA again, I don't worry about the offense with Chip, especially with what they have returning. But defensively, that's where I have the question. That's why, and again, I think they're going to be in a lot of close games. I think their big games are going to be close. 7-2, 6-3, you can flip a coin on one of them. You got to catch some breaks. But I felt like that was kind of a good even number for them.
6-3, I could see it. And, we're going to get to USC. I think there's a lot of positives. I mean, way too many positives to go with them. Coming in with Lincoln Riley, Caleb Williams, the huge transfer classes they had there. But I hear your point, and DTR has been a point of frustration, I think, for a long time with UCLA fans. However, I think the thing that the national public, I think, is underestimating is how big of a win that was for him to go into USC last year and finally get over the hump. Like, for people on the West Coast, that is the equivalent of Michigan finally getting over the hump against Ohio State. It is that big of a deal. This is the biggest rivalry for my money on the West Coast. And it's not like he was terrible. We're looking at the total Pac-12 numbers for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. First in total touchdowns. First in PFF grade. Whether you follow that or not, it's still impressive. First in adjusted passing yards, first in total yards per play. It's not perfect. He throws, some head-scratching interceptions. And even the SC game, where you look at the highlights, he hurled the USC defensive back. A lot of people forget the first 2 passes of those games were intercepted. Like, it was a rough start to the game for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. But what I will say is once he got over that hump and got that confidence in him, I really wish we got to see the bowl game against NC State, because I think if he came out there and continued that level of play, because after those 2 interceptions, he finished basically the last 7 quarters of the season, 7 touchdowns through the air, 150-plus rushing yards, and 2 touchdowns on his own from there. So he was hitting a hot stride coming down the stretch there. So I'm really, really pumped to see this version of Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And obviously, I am not comparing him to these guys, but how many times have we seen that extra year quarterback kind of come back? The Baker Mayfields, the Joe Burrows. Once again, not even putting them in the same stratosphere as those guys, but just that extra year. And I think from a leadership standpoint, we saw something different with him last year. You go back, watch the Stanford game. His arm he got knocked up on a play. His arm is loose, falling to the ground. He had to get it popped back in. He had to come back in to throw the game-winning touchdown. He did and made plays. So in terms of Dorian, is he perfect? No, but I think he's a very effective leader. Charbonnet, you hit the nail on the head. I never thought about the James Conner comparison, but just how ferocious those guys run with the quick feet that they have, that is a heads-on comparison when it comes to Zach Charbonnet. I love that. And then with the defense, it is the big question mark, right? Jerry Azzinaro, who is the scapegoat of all scapegoats at UCLA. Jake, I know you don't deal with the media here on the West Coast. Imagine having like the worst defensive coordinator in school history and him not facing the media for 4 years straight. The guy never spoke to the media once. This is a big deal that this guy is finally out. They got Bill McGovern in there. They're going to, do generally more of a 4-3 kind of rushing unit now, as opposed to the, 4-2-5 that they were using beforehand. So I think rushing 4 guys as opposed to 7 or 8, allowing that big play to happen. You look at their pass defense. I think they're in a good position to finally have the best pass defense they may have had in a while. This kid, Devin Kirkwood, man, keep an eye on this guy. Very,
without a doubt. I do want to say this about defensive line. When you look at UCLA, like, to me, the pass rush was getting there, but they weren't getting there on the down that you make the money on. That's third down. UCLA's got to be so much better on third down. Offensive coordinators get paid not to move the ball in between the 20s. It's to convert third downs and score in the red zone. Defensive coordinators get paid to stop you on third down and hold you to field goals. And I think if they can be more of a bend but don't break style of defense with the offense they have, you'll start winning those games that you lost by 4, by 6, because you're going to get that extra score, get that extra stop. I do want to say something, experience, and good, bad, or indifferent. Experience is the one trait that you can't teach. You got to go out there and experience it for yourself. But, Drake has a great line in one of his songs. It's real when you are who you thought you were. And I think that's what kind of happened with DTR. He went out there. He was struggling a little bit early. He was putting the ball in harm's way, a little bit kind of like Jaden Daniels from Arizona State. If you watch the way they play, there's some similarities there. But growing through that adversity, and I got a lot of respect for him because he took a lot of heat. He took a lot of heat as the quarterback. He didn't crumble like some guys. He didn't go make excuses. He didn't go hide. He said, you know what? That's fine. I'll fix it. And he fixed it. And there's something just as a player or as a man or as a human being that when you look that dragon in the eyes, man, and you slay it and you go win that game like they won it against USC, that kind of levels you up. You walk around a little bit different. You eat lunch a little bit different. You get in the car a little bit different. And to be able to have success at this high of a level, I don't care if you're playing. I don't care if you're coaching. You got to have a little bit of ego. You got to have a little bit of that dog in you, and I think he's got it.
I think he's got it too, and it would not shock me. And I know this is a big statement, but this is now his 5th year within the conference. He is very experienced. He could be looking at that first or second team all Pac-12 if everything goes right for him this year.
I don't think that's crazy to say at all. Hell, he may be the commissioner in 2 years.
And I want to give you 2 guys to watch out before we move on to USC. Jake Bobo, I was already excited about this transfer to begin with, led the ACC in catches. But then you look at the quarterbacks that he was dealing with at Duke last year. 4 different quarterbacks saw the field, sub 3,000 yards passing for a 3-9 team, 9 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Think about how bad of a situation that was for a guy like Jake Bobo.
Yeah.
Now coming into an offense with Chip Kelly, I think I was very kind of stoked on the acquisition of Bobo in general. And then I did research, and I think this guy's going to be a flat-out stud. So I'm very excited.
Yeah, well, too, you know this. When you're at Duke, they knew who the ball was going to. There was no mystery on who they were trying to get the ball to, and yet he was still able to produce. Now you go into an offense, it's going to be like stepping in the 21st century out of the Stone Age, where you're not the only weapon. You've got a good ground game, which is going to bring those safeties up. It's going to give you more opportunities down the field. So I'm with you 100%. I think the sky's the limit for this guy. You've had time to build that chemistry with DTR. And again, look, at the end of the day, it's like I say all the time, chemistry isn't just a class I failed in high school. It's a real thing.
Yeah, and then with Chip too, he is really kind of, trying to change the perception with the transfer portal. I think he's on the cutting edge of something special there, because what a lot of outsiders don't understand is UCLA has academic qualifications that are very hard to get into for recruits. Yeah. So when you transfer in, it's at like a 2.2, 2.3. As long as your GPA is within that range, you can go out and get whoever you want. He's using the transfer portal like you and I would go to the Home Depot. It's like, well, we need a little fix it with the shower, maybe some spray here. Let me go get Darius Mawasu, the linebacker from Hawaii, who can help me clear up some mistakes. Oh, we need some pass rush. Let me go get Gabriel and Grayson Murphy, 2 guys from North Texas.
North Texas, baby.
But very solid pass rushers that have gotten rave reviews in the spring. Need a left tackle. I'm going to go get Raekwon O'Neal from Rutgers, a guy that started 21 games within the Big Ten. So, he is using the transfer portal in a way that I don't think gets enough credit nationally. And I think this could be the year where we start to see Chip Kelly maybe competing for one of those lower tier New Year's Day bowls if everything goes right.
No, I'm with you. And again, look, the transfer portal as a coach, it's one thing to take a high school kid, even if he's a 5-star, you haven't seen him yet. He hasn't been on a college campus. He hadn't had to deal with that life. I go out and get somebody that's already proven at this level. It's a proven commodity. Again, I'll take a guy with 2 years experience in Division I that's had success over any 5-star you bring me out of high school, because I know what I'm getting. Like you said, it's like going to Lowe's and getting a filter for the vacuum. You already got the vacuum. You just need to add that final piece.
Exactly. And this is where I want to transition into our next team, because you came out, and I understand with the schedule, you had Washington at 7-2.
Yeah.
I definitely have my thoughts on this. I don't think we're going to agree on it, but I want to hear your take out, my man. I want to hear why UW is 7-2. I like Kalen DeBoer for the record. I think he did great things at Washington. Give me your take, man. This is a very interesting one, I think, to the college football landscape on why Washington was 7-2 in your preseason prediction.
Yeah, well, a lot of it, and I hope he does, man. If Michael Penix Jr. can stay healthy, I think people forget how good this guy was at Indiana. I mean, that same Indiana team basically that came back, they lost a couple guys. He goes down, they win 2 games. That's how important he was. But, you look at DeBoer, and I feel like, a lot of times first-year coaches, even though you were at Fresno State, go into new conferences, and the book's not really out on them. Not that you're not watching tape and you don't have a good idea of what they do, but it's one thing to watch tape. It's another thing to call games against a guy. You have no feel for him, really. That's why you'll see a lot of second-year head coaches struggle a little bit because the book's out on them. I always use the analogy of a major league pitcher, right? That's this rookie phenom that's coming up, first 2 or 3 starts in the majors. He's shutting guys down. You're like, oh, my God, we got the next Nolan Ryan. And then all of a sudden, start 4, 5, and 6, he's getting knocked around the yard. And you're like, wait, what's going on? Well, the book kind of came out on you. They just hadn't seen you yet, and now they're seeing you. But when I look at what they return, I look up front at the guys they bring back. I think the weapons are good enough around them, but it's the schedule, man. They have, in my opinion, the easiest schedule to navigate through the Pac-12. Big games are at home. You're not playing the big dogs really in all aspects. I mean, we can go through the schedule. I would rank their schedule number 1. And I just feel like if Penix Jr. can stay healthy, with his ability to work the ball down the field, he does a really good deep ball. He's got escapability. I just feel like it's one of those years. I would not be shocked if Washington had a much better year this year than they do next year for those reasons. So there's always a surprise in the conference. There's always a disappointment in the conference. So I think you're really going to see Washington take a big step. And you know what? A good Washington is good for college football. I don't think people realize how much money Washington pours into their athletics. They're not playing around. They want to be good. You look at Washington compared to Colorado. I feel like Colorado is kind of happy to be there. You know what I'm saying? But Washington wants to be good. They really, really want to be good. They're my surprise this year because they got experience. The schedule works. First-year head coach that's already proven somewhat of a new system. And if they would have got Jake Haener to transfer, I may have picked him to win the conference.
And that's where we differ, because if Haener goes there, I'm all in. I might go 8-1 in conference with that. I really think there's a real chance that happens. I'm just not as high on Penix Jr. as you are, I believe. I mean, the breakout year he had, he was still completing roughly 56.4% of his passes. Last year when he went down, he was 4 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. That's nearly a 1 touchdown to 2 interception ratio. I'm not that high on Penix Jr. I think he, at his core, he is a great game manager if you have the pieces around him to make that work. But when I go back to Washington, I'm looking for the explosion on offense. Aaron Dumas is apparently the number 1 running back there. I believe he's a New Mexico transfer coming in there. Solid back, but he's not the guy that I'm like paying admission prices to go see a game at Washington, if you know what I mean. The receiving core is a little underrated to me. I think Romeo Odunze, Jalen McMillan, very talented. I think they have potential to be very good, especially with Kalen DeBoer being there. I'm just not sold on Penix Jr. at the quarterback position. And on top of that, the last staff that was completely overturned, very defensive-minded. I know Fresno State had some solid defensive numbers to their resume as well. But you lose Trent McDuffie, Kyler Gordon, Brendan Radley-Hines out of the secondary. Those are huge losses. I mean, those are guys that are going to play in the NFL, next season. I'm just not as high on them as I think you are, and we're going to have to, agree to disagree. I think I'm going to go Oregon as a lock. I'm going to take UCLA over them. Michigan State doesn't count. The teams that I'm actually sneaky high on that we could talk about too, I think Oregon State and Stanford might be better than Washington this year.
Look, Oregon State to me is unbelievably interesting. I love what they've done at that place. That's not an easy place to win. But what they return up front, I think I had Oregon State going 4-5, I believe, in the conference just because of the schedule and the kind of way it was laid out. But, when you look at Penix Jr., the staff at Indiana is very defensive-oriented as well. I mean, Tom Allen's not a guy that's going to go out there and move it around and do a lot of things. He fired the OC, and they had more turnover on that staff after Penix Jr. left. And if you look, they couldn't protect him. That he was running for his life. You look at that first year, he was able to sit in the pocket, go through his progressions. And I think he took a lot more shots down the field than what people realize, and that kind of opened up the run game. Completion percentage is huge. I will never argue that point. But as a defensive guy, I think sometimes it can be misleading because even if you're attempting balls down the field, it worries me. I have to protect that. So, when you don't have that capability, those safeties start walking down, that box gets more condensed. You're in a lot more 2nd and 8s, 2nd and 7s, 2nd and 9s than you are 2nd and 5, 2nd and 4, where the playbook's really open. And I think him coming off the year he had 2 years ago and then the letdown from last year, I think he's motivated. But look, he's got to stay healthy. I know everybody does, and that's really easy to say. But I will say I'm going on this crusade. The term game manager, I think it's the worst term in sports. Because if I have a quarterback that's not a game manager, whether it's Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, the worst quarterback in the country, I don't have a quarterback. Like, to me, so what is not a game manager? He doesn't know how much time's left on the clock. He doesn't know how to check their protection. Any quarterback that's worth it, to me, that's like saying, well, the CEO, he's just a good business manager. Well, yes, that's like the biggest part of the job. There's been a lot of offenses with a guy that was better mentally than he was physically. Greatest quarterback of all time, Tom Brady, is a lot better mentally than he is physically. So, that term to me, I feel like we should come up with something new. I've been trying to think of what it is. I just can't.
We can find it. We'll find
it together. And I'm not, and again, I love disagreeing. If me and you came on here and agreed on everything, the show would be as good as it was.
Not at all, man.
But
this is why we wanted to have you on.
I feel like they're sneaky, man. I feel like they're sneaky. Dumas, I think he's a good player. Do they have anybody that's really you're beating down the door on offense to go get if you're an NFL team? No, but sometimes in a crazy way that kind of brings you together a little bit. So, that was really my one reach. I believe I did have them losing to Oregon and UCLA. Those were the 2 losses I think that they had. But other than that, man, I think they're going to be in every game. And again, up front, because you know as well as I do, running backs are great. Wide receivers are great.
It's the line of
corners are great. Yeah. This game, whether it's Friday night tights, Friday night lights, NFL or high-level college football, this game is won and lost up front. That's how it will always be. I don't care if you run the triple option or you go 5 wide every time or you run the air raid. So that's where I think the difference is. But again, I go back to the schedule. I just feel like it's unbelievably easy to navigate that schedule compared to some of the other ones. Stanford, let me ask you this.
Yep.
Stanford to me, and look, Tanner McKee off the cuff,
yes.
You look at him, 6'6", 225. He's going to start playing better. But Stanford's got to start running the ball better. To me, David Shaw should be a little bit on the hot seat. I mean, they again, I know he went in there. I think they went to 3 BCS games, something like that. They were on an absolute tear, but they have fallen off a cliff. And Stanford's a place that you can win. That team to me is just an absolute amalgamation of 13 different things coming together. And it's like a Jackson Pollock painting. I just look at it and I'm like, I don't get it. I don't get it.
And I hear you. The defense was abysmal last year.
So bad.
A lot of things going wrong at the farm. 2-7 in conference, 3-9. What I like about Stanford is you have the hardest position to find in the quarterback position at McKee. That goes without saying. I think there's a scenario that can play out where next year we pretty much have our top 3 quarterbacks if they kind of, fit the bill that are going to be the picks in the NFL draft. It's your Bryce Youngs, it's your CJ Strouds, your Will Levises. I think McKee can be that 4th guy. I really do. That can maybe sneak into the first round. But what helps him out is I really like the pass catchers that are surrounding him. There's this tight end, Benjamin Jurasik, who I think is really kind of an underrated name for the Mackey Award. 43 catches, 658 yards, 3 touchdowns. And I'm not even counting the 3 major receivers they have that all return over 500 yards of receiving. Elijah Higgins being a big part of that. John Humphreys. And then Bryson Tremaine. The guy played 5 games last year, 5 touchdown catches, 19 catches, 240 yards. The passing offense, I think, has a chance to be stride for stride or maybe just below that of USC if McKee is as advertised this year.
Again, to me, and I'm with you. I mean, you look at what they return, you just look at the production, and look, having a great tight end, man, that's like finding a great girl nowadays. They're just not out there when you look around. But
my
thing is, The run game has to be there for that to open up. Stanford cannot be one-dimensional, because if you're one-dimensional, you're not dimensional at all. So if that happens, they could have a big year. But if they can – and you don't have to be elite on the ground. I'm not saying they got to be the best, like shades of Toby Gerhart and stuff like that at Stanford. They just have to be good enough to respect it. If they're good enough to respect it, they could go out there and score 35, 42 points against some of these defenses.
And I think that's the case. Like with Shaw, I think he has to have that year to kind of solidify himself. But I'm willing to bet on David Shaw because I think before the last few seasons, he's in there with the Kyle Whittinghams, the Kirk Ferentzes, the Pat Fitzgeralds, where it's like this guy could easily take a bigger time job. He just wants to stay at this school because he likes it there. He's familiar with it. He could have taken a lot of different SEC jobs if the opportunity came up his way. So I'm willing to bet and put my name on the line that I think Stanford gets their act together. Am I going to say they're a 9-win team? No, but I think they can win 7 or 8 games this year, go to the bowl game, and maybe get 8 or 9 there. So
so I'm taking Washington. You're taking Stanford. I love it. This will be fun.
Stanford's mine. And I mean, Oregon State, man. And I got a little bit concerned because we're at Pac-12 Media Day this year. And I asked Jonathan Smith face-to-face, head coach of the Oregon State Beavers. I'm going, Chance Nolan. This guy had a great year last year, got them back to a bowl game. And, I mean, it's classic coach talk, but this worried me a little bit. He goes, the QB competition is open right now. And I'm looking at him going like, dude, you haven't been to a bowl game in 4 or 5 years. This program finally has, some solidarity with a guy like Chance Nolan out there, getting you guys back to bowl competition, go to the Jimmy Kimmel Bowl right here in Los Angeles. You're already looking about maybe going to a backup. Unless if it's a really great option, he can do better than Nolan. I think that's hard to find. So I'm a little bit less on them. Love Deshaun Fenwick. I know you're familiar with him from his days at South Carolina.
Yep.
He's going to have a breakout year. Speaking of another fifth-year senior there. And they just got some great transfers coming in there. Trayshawn Harrison, Florida State. We've all heard about Tyjon Lindsey. This guy's been all over college football. But I think Oregon State is the perfect place for him to kind of make his home. I just like that offense. Their offensive line,
yes,
the case to me last year was probably the best within Pac-12 play. Whatever they're doing with their offensive line coach, that guy needs a raise because he did a hell of a job with what they were offering there at Oregon State. So those are my 2 teams that I would probably take over Washington today. However, I put a caveat in there. If Sam Heward is truly the 5-star quarterback that he was recruited as, and he comes into a Kalen DeBoer offense where we've seen the Jay Caners come in there and shred it, maybe there's some credence there that they can go 7-2. So Sam Heward is my one caveat where that does come to fruition. Does that sound fair?
No, it does sound fair. And I'll go back to what you said up front. Look, I mean, that's where you're going to bridge the gap a little bit. That's where I think Oregon State, again, I just mentioned it. It helps you out so much outside when you're a threat inside. When I look at Oregon State, I think they're the team this year that wins a couple that they shouldn't and loses a couple that they shouldn't. I just kind of get that vibe from them a little bit.
Classic,
again, Coach Smith, hats off to him. And when it comes down to Nolan and the quarterback situation, we're kind of seeing that a little bit around college football right now. Look at Michigan. I mean, Cade McNamara is in a battle for his life with J.J. McCarthy after Cade McNamara just led him over Ohio State and into the playoff. Jim Harbaugh's out there wearing khaki shorts and cleats inside, and we're going to talk about a QB competition with the guy that basically, was the golden goose. So, look, you always want competition. You always want to out-recruit guys. That's the goal. You want to bring in better players than what you had. But, again, a proven commodity is a proven commodity. And I don't think Nolan's the guy that's going to rest on his laurels. You get a little bit of that taste. You take one. It's like me, my dad gave me my first beer. I took one sip out of it. I wanted another sip out of it. I think they want to come back and kind of get a little bit more. They got a taste of success. Everybody in Corvallis is high-fiving you. You're not having to pay cover to get into the bars. All the girls are on you. I mean, I think they want a little bit more of that lifestyle.
I think so too, man. And that is a state that's dominated by Oregon football.
Yeah.
We're going to get to them too. I'll just kind of go into like a huge 3-team motion right here.
Do it.
Oregon, Utah, USC. I think those are the preliminary 3 teams at the top of the conference this year. Oregon, they're kind of similar to me when I look at what they have on offense coming back. I know you've watched a lot more Bo Nix than I have, but if you would have blindfolded me and you would have just shown the stats, and I come back out and the stats are between Michael Penix Jr.'s best year and Bo Nix's best year, very similar. Like, I can't really tell the difference, and I don't think Penix Jr. is that good. That's my point. Bo Nix,
underperformed. I know he didn't have the best offensive line at Auburn. I know there's a lot of different things going there. Is this – I mean, it's maybe slightly better than Anthony Brown. I'm not really sold on Oregon in year one. I like the Dan Lanning hired. I think that front seven is going to be a problem.
Yeah.
Like that front seven, especially with Dan Lanning doing what he did with Kirby Smart's defense last year, both of them collaborating on that. And everything I'm hearing out of spring practice, DJ Johnson, this converted tight end, they've moved to defensive end. This guy in the spring game, I think he had like 15 total snaps. He had 5 sacks in those snaps. This guy was unblockable. Have the 2 best interior defensive linemen coming back within the conference this year with Popo Amave and Braylon Duran, I think his name is. So you got those 2 guys on the interior, DJ Johnson on the outside. Then you got Noah Sewell and Justin Flo. We're very familiar with in Los Angeles. He spurned SC to go up to Oregon. He was the top recruit within the state of California. I think the defense is going to be very good with Oregon. Not sold on the offense. Don't really know where they're going to lie there. Utah, I think, is the safest bet within the conference. Just what I know. I mentioned Kyle Whittingham as one of the most underrated coaches. He might be the most underrated coach when you really
agree.
Break it down. Cam Rising, I just love what I see from the guy. And I asked Whittingham face-to-face at the Pac-12 Media Day this year. I go, what was it about Rising? Because before he was inserted last year, you guys were a team middling near the bottom of the Pac-12. I mean, Charlie Brewer came in there and just really could not play. You guys lost to BYU. You guys are down to San Diego State. Rising gets inserted. He at least takes it to overtime against San Diego State. And then he goes and pretty much rips off the Pac-12 into the Rose Bowl, almost beating Ohio State. You know, Tavian Thomas, the running back, the dual tight ends they had there. And I know you're a football fan. You'll appreciate this. This is like Hernandez and Gronk of the Pac-12 being out there on the same team. That's a really, really solid unit. And then you combine that with the receiving room. Devon Velley is my breakout wide receiver within the Pac-12 as a whole. I think this guy is a big-bodied 6'5" receiver on the outside. Rising's going to need that extra dude. You have Micah Bernard as your backup running back. We all saw the catch he made in the Rose Bowl. That was his kind of national walkout. He was phenomenal. Great offensive line. Defense is always pretty much intact with Whittingham, so I like them. And then the last team, before I let you just run wild on these 3 teams, SC. It's the team that everyone's been talking about in the offseason. Lincoln Riley, I don't know where you guys put him as, you know, a head coach. He's definitely top 5 in most famous coaches, I think, in college football today. He is now at USC, brings with him a bevy of a transfer portal. And I was talking about Chip Kelly using the transfer portal to his, you know, benefit. This guy, I mean, he just the most all-purpose yards in the Pac-12 and Travis Dye. Caleb Williams, who, you know, for my money is the most talented quarterback he's ever had a chance to mold. And that includes Kyler Murray and Baker Mayfield there. You know, he gets a Biletnikoff winner in the transfer portal. We might have to fact check this. I don't think there's ever been a Biletnikoff winner in the transfer portal in general. George Johnson, Mario Williams. That receiving room is the deepest I can remember as a fan of West Coast football. I mean, Taj Washington, a guy that had 600-plus yards receiving last year, 55-plus catches. This guy's going to be like the 5th or 6th option on this team. It makes no sense. So SC, they got some questions on defense. You know, Corey Foreman, highly recruited defensive end. Romello Height, Auburn transfer coming there. Shane Lee, I would love to see a healthy Shane Lee here. I think he looked phenomenal as a freshman at Alabama. But give me your thoughts on those 3 teams. That was just kind of a brief synopsis. I got you on here, Jake. I want to hear your takes.
Yeah, you know, Oregon, again, you kind of talked about it. Bo Nix at Auburn, you know, he was in a toxic situation. I mean, Gus Malzahn ends up getting fired. He went from calling the plays to not calling the plays. It was an absolute disaster. Then Brian Harsin comes in. Auburn's offensive line was just abysmal. So I'm interested to see Bo Nix with a competent offensive line. I mean, the things he did against LSU last year, I mean, he had flashes. You remember him against Oregon as a freshman at Auburn. He's got a bunch of talent. It's just him putting it together, and he's got to cut down on making stupid decisions. And I know every quarterback has to do that, even the best. But I'm interested to see him behind a competent offensive line. I had Oregon going 8-1 in the conference. Again, you look at him up front. You know, Mario really kind of changed the mindset there at Oregon. They went from, you know, kind of spread you out, beat you in the seam, beat you outside, to we're going to beat you in the interior, work the play action game, not be as open. Then defensively, we know they're talented. I just think they're a solid all-around team. You know, I don't think they're going to beat Georgia. You know, poor Bo Nix, you escaped the SEC, and you still got to wake up and go see Georgia. But Dan Lanning is similar in that mindset that Mario had. It's going to be smash mouth. They're going to be coached well on defense. They're going to tackle well. They're going to come downhill. Then when you look at Utah, I got them going 9-0. I know people say, oh, well, nobody ever goes undefeated in the Pac-12. Well, you know what? Records and rules are made to be broken. I think Utah's the most complete team in the Pac-12. I think that they're a team that, number one, will run through a wall for their head coach. He's proven it to them. He loves them beyond the game of football. They're going to be great in all three facets: special teams, defense, offense, and they're so physical. They are so physical. They play a downhill style of ball. Cam Rising came in, proved that he's the guy. You kind of found gold when you were looking for silver. Sometimes it happens like that. So I got Utah actually losing in the swamp to Florida, but going to – because, again, they started out 1-2 last year. People forget that. You brought it up, and then they went on a run. That's going to be an interesting game down there in Gainesville. I'm so interested to see the spread on that game. I think Florida opened up as a 1.5 point favorite. Anthony Richardson is an alien. I don't know what planet he's from, but he's not from here. That roster is depleted, but man, Ben Hill Griffin Stadium, it is an absolute, it's so hostile, and it's going to be so humid and so hot. You look at, and I think some people kind of overblow it a little bit, but early in the year is where you see it. Not later in the year when you're kind of acclimated. It's earlier in the year. I wonder how much cramps are going to be involved, but I am sold on Utah, all three phases. Then SC, they've got unbelievable weapons. They got the Blitnikoff where they paid for him, but they got him. He's a hell of a player. Caleb Williams, we know how talented he is. I'm interested to see how his sophomore campaign goes after coming in and kind of righting the ship a little bit there in Oklahoma. Lincoln Riley can't cook a brisket, but he can cook up an offense, buddy. The way he signals, the way they communicate, it's built off the gap scheme run game. His play action game off that is so tough for a linebacker because you see the guards pull. You see the backside two pull, whether it's the play action off the counter, play action off the power, play action off of trucks. He's got an unbelievable play action game. That's why he's so good in the red zone. You add Caleb Williams to that, Mario Williams to that, Travis Dye to that, Jordan Addison to that, and you talked about a few other ones. But I'm still, that offensive line I'm not sold on. I know they return guys, but I said this about South Carolina. Just because I return a card that didn't work in 2021 and 2022 doesn't mean it's going to work better. And then you look defensively. Think there's a lot of question marks there. But one thing I'm interested to see, with some of these Frankenstein teams, and what I mean by that is these teams that just grab these big names and put them together. You see in the NFL all the time. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. The Rams did it last year. You bring all these big names in, try and mesh them together. But if it doesn't go good early, because Lincoln's not an enforcer. Lincoln's not the type guy that is I walk in the room, you know who it is, stand up, show respect. He's more of the kind of the bro. I don't know another way to put it. That's just how it is. Not that he's soft, but he's not really that enforcer. And sometimes when you have that many personalities that are that big, you can't let them walk all over you, especially if it's going bad, or maybe Mario Williams isn't getting the amount of balls thrown his way because Jordan Addison's getting a lot. So it's an experiment, a very talented experiment, but I've got to see it walk before I want to give it the best accolades. Now, I got them going 7-2. I tell you a game they better watch out for. You better watch out for Fresno State at home. I'm just telling you, you better watch out for those guys. I opened the show with it today. There's a lot of Cincinnati in that team. If you look at it from the personnel, the coach, Jeff Tedford's the guy that's proven he can do it there. This isn't his first rodeo. And then you've got a schedule that sets up somewhat similar to last year. So that's a team that's very confident. Number one offense in the Mountain West. Jake Haener, Hogwarts graduate, cum laude. I'm very interested to see how that goes, because that will give me a little bit of a barometer early on how organized they are as a team. That's what I want to see.
You don't have to tell us twice, too, about Fresno State. We've played them 3 times in the last 5, 6, 7 years. They've beaten us all 3 times. They beat us last year with Haener and DeBoer coming through. So that team is a nightmare. Haener is just one of those guys you got to kill 7 times. He's like a vampire out there.
Dude, I know.
He will just keep coming at your neck. And one of my favorite college football quarterbacks to watch, I think that's going to be a guy when we get – because we do NFL draft stuff here. When he gets to the Senior Bowl next year, I think it's all going to be Haener when he gets there, really making a jump at the Senior Bowl. But we have a speed round that I'm really, really excited to get into.
Let's do it.
And before I do that, I don't really know your background all too well. I know you follow SEC football. Who was your team growing up as a fan of college football?
Well, man, I'm from Auburn. My father was an All-American there. Grew up there. I could walk outside on Saturday mornings and hear the band playing. I always say on the show, look, everybody's a fan of somebody, but it doesn't have to affect how you evaluate, how you project. I mean, I'm harder on Auburn than anybody is. But, man, I played at South Alabama, coached for 9 years, 6 at the Division I level. During COVID, came back. Coach told us it was probably going to be at least a month. That's when nobody knew anything. It was just like, all right, go home, get away from everybody, and just started messing around with this podcast. And, it really kind of blew up and took a chance on it. So, again, man, it's like I tell people, if I was a chef for 9 years, I'd probably have a good chef podcast. I know how the sausage is made. I've been in those rooms. I've been in those recruits' living rooms. So, man, I understand it. We went out there, played San Diego State when I was at South Alabama and stuff like that. So, yeah, I love it, dude. I'm a lover of sports. I'm a lover of football. And that's why I'm so excited for this month to hurry up and get to the end.
Awesome, man. Well, are you ready for the speed round? We got some fun.
I was born ready.
All right, here we go. Question number 1, Mr. J. Crain. Is Texas actually back?
Not yet. Not yet. Look, here's the problem. When you don't give a coach full control, it's going to be tough. And when you have 9 people steering the ship, you don't have anybody steering the ship. Until Texas gives the coach full control, you can sign Arch Manning. You can bring in Quinn Ewers. You got to stop somebody on defense. Everybody always talks about Texas offense. Y'all got to stop somebody. Said the same thing about Oklahoma. Because if you look at all these teams that are great on offense, they're super offense heavy, they get to the playoff and they get shoved in a locker in front of everybody in the high school because they're not good enough up front on either side. So, again, we say Texas is back every year. Not that I think they're going to have a bad year, but I don't have them winning the Big 12. I have Oklahoma winning the Big 12. But until they give a coach full control like Nick has, like Kirby has, like Lane has, like Lincoln had at Oklahoma, you're not going to see, and Texas isn't going to be what they want to be and what they project to be.
Apologies if you're hearing some drilling in the background. I'm in my office. I have no idea what's going on there.
Well, listen. If this is something from Taken, just tell me what the person looks like, and we'll come get you.
I'm going to be hiding under my table with the cell phone going off very soon. So
yeah, I'll just call Liam Neeson. We'll figure it out.
He's the guy we got to call, man. Second question I got for you, Mr. Crain, within the speed round. Do you believe in Marcus Freeman being the right guy for Notre Dame?
I do. I talked about this on the show the other day. Now, I think Notre Dame's going to join a conference, before it's all said and done, because we're moving to super conferences, and you can do this Kelly Clarkson Miss Independent thing all you want. But eventually, when teams are having to play 10 in-conference games out of 12 in a regular season, they're not scheduling Notre Dame. Nobody's going to. So I think he kind of brings a little bit different flavor than Brian Kelly. I think he can bring in the guys that Brian Kelly couldn't get to get over the hump a little bit. We had Drake Bowen on our show the other day. And Marcus is a guy, he knows ball, but he's kind of in that new wave of coach, right? That Lane Kiffin, that Shane Beamer, that kind of young guy with a lot of energy that understands social media, that understands how to play the game. And you're seeing it right now. Now, their schedule this year is absolute hell, especially going, to the Horseshoe, playing Clemson, even though it's at home. It's a tough schedule to navigate. I think they got BYU too. Navy's never easy because it's a triple option. So I believe he's going to be a guy that can get them in a better position. Now, can he be the guy that brings it home? I've got to see them. I've got to see them recruit at a high level and stack classes, not 15th ranked, not 11th ranked, top 10, top 5, like Notre Dame can be. So I think he is a guy that can get them closer. Can they get over the hump? That's still a question that remains.
Totally agree, but I think a very encouraging sign there was the players' reaction.
Yes.
Marcus Freeman coming in there. You've heard nothing but positivity. You saw the viral video of him getting announced. Coming to the coaches, I've seen Michael Mayer speak about it on different podcasts saying this is the guy. So I'm really high on him coming into Notre Dame. Next question I got for you, Mr. Crain. How many wins in year 1 does Brian Kelly and his horrendous fake accent get for LSU?
I got him going 8-4. I got to go 4-4. Now, look, it's a matter of time. LSU, you won a national championship with Les Miles, which I don't know if he ate more of the grass or smoked more of it. You won one with Ed Orgeron, who's a walk-in Etch-a-Sketch. So bringing a guy in that's somewhat more of a CEO, LSU just needs to be organized. That state is unbelievably saturated with talent. You're surrounded by states that are unbelievably saturated with talent. There is no Auburn to the Alabama, Mississippi State to the Ole Miss. Hell, there's not even a Vandy to the Tennessee. You've got the whole state for yourself. I think Brian Kelly, within 5 years, will win a national championship at LSU because, to me, Alabama is a harder job than LSU. Florida is a harder job than LSU. It's a national brand. You don't compete against anybody in state, and those kids are willing. It's LSU and the Saints. That's what it is. It's who dat and go Tigers. So I think he's like the stepdad you never wanted, but you always needed. The guy who comes in and says, hey, clean your room, dress better, get better friends. And you hate him until you're walking across the stage at Columbia with a law degree and a $350,000 a year job at Goldman Sachs waiting on you.
I love it, man. I love everything about Kelly to LSU aside from that accent. That's got to go.
He's going from Catholic to Catholic, man. Not a hard transition.
It runs in the blood, man. And Kelly, excited to see what goes on there. The next question we got for you, Mr. Crain. If Texas A&M fails to live up to expectations again, despite their incredible recruiting classes they've had, is it out for Jimbo? I mean, we've kind of given him enough time to really settle in there.
Well, no. I mean, the contract, they gave him half the state, basically. He's got more, hunting land than the guy with the most dangerous game right now. But 2023 is the year for A&M. I told A&M, listen, I know you guys are sick of the 8-4 jokes. I know 9-3 isn't good enough. But Texas A&M's never won the West. Like, Missouri's won the East. South Carolina's won the East. So it's not like a coach came in there and went to the SEC championship 3 years. And then Kevin Sumlin, it was a disaster. He left a disaster. Kevin Sumlin was trying to build an offense. Jimbo's trying to build a program. I think they start 1-2 in SEC play. If you look at that schedule, you got Arkansas, neutral site, who I think is the third best team in the SEC. You go to Mississippi State, which is always scary as hell playing Mike Leach in between September 20th and October 10th. It always is. Then you got Bama at their place, who you beat last year after you called them out. That's going to be the ass beating of a lifetime. Excuse my language, but that's going to be the truth. So I told them, listen, they may be the number one team going into 2023. They return everybody up front on both sides of the ball. I think Max Johnson's going to end up being the guy over Haynes King. I don't believe in Haynes King as a thrower. We'll see. Maybe he's improved that much. But they're going to give Jimbo more time because they have to.
Mike Leach, the Kyler Murray of college football coaches. He's very good first couple months of the year, kind of tailors off at the end. This is another question we got for you. And there's no way you can sneak into the college football playoffs nowadays. I feel like we've identified those teams that can all really make a run at that. But I will say this. Surprise team that sneaks into your top 10 this year.
Fresno State.
Oh.
Easy.
Okay.
Easy. Absolutely easy. Watch out for Tennessee, too. If they win one of Georgia and Bama, they could legitimately go 7-1 in the SEC and not play for the SEC championship. And if they go beat Pitt, that's a team. That's a one-loss SEC team to really, really, really watch out for.
Next question we got for you, Mr. Crain. Can Georgia, despite losing 15 starters to the pros, including 5 in the first round, can they still compete for a national title?
For sure. I think they're going to be more explosive on offense than you've seen. They were decimated on the outside by injuries last year. Kyrus Jackson was really never healthy. George Pickens, we know that, and look what he's doing at the Steelers right now. They got the best tight end room in the country. Brock Bowers, Darnell Washington. You look at even the Oscar Delp kid, who's coming in as a freshman's a stud. I think you're going to see the offense be open more. I think Monken wanted to open it up last year, but Stetson Bennett, who didn't really take any reps during the offseason, had to play quarterback. Your defense was once in a generation, and you were beat up on the outside. It kind of forced his hand a little bit. I think Georgia goes to the SEC undefeated. I think they lose to Alabama in the SEC championship game, then lose to Ohio State in the playoff. I don't have them winning it, but Georgia's here to stay.
And we just got a few more questions for you after this, but we mentioned Utah having the Aaron Hernandez-Gronk tight end room. The Georgia tight end room is something we've never even seen before at the college level. I think those are 3 certified pros. I'd probably have to go back to early 2000s Miami with Shockey and Winslow being there at the same time, really making a comparison there for the best tight end room we've ever seen. Start, sit, bench. Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and because he's in LA, because he's the new guy there, Caleb Williams, you're the head coach, Jake.
I'm starting Bryce Young. I'm benching C.J. Stroud, and I'm Caleb. I'm sorry, you're gonna have to bring me the playbook. I've got to see more. I think C.J. Stroud wins the Heisman this year. I think Bama wins the national championship. C.J. wins the Heisman. Ohio State's 13 flavors of pissed after what happened last year. So is Alabama. Bryce Young is as pro ready as it comes. But I'll give you another quarterback to watch out for. Will Rogers at Mississippi State may be the second or third most NFL-ready quarterback in the league. That's a guy to watch out for. That kid can sling it.
Awesome. And then just the last question we got for you. Give me your Final Four. I know you mentioned Ohio State's going to be in the mix there. Give me your Final Four. Who you got?
Look, I'm not one of these people that's going to go reaching to try and make headlines. I'm going to call it like I see it. I got Bama, Ohio State, Georgia, and now that Sam Hartman's, kind of indefinitely out, I think he'll be back for Wake. I think Clemson.
I love it, man. Jake, so good to have you on again, bro. We got to do this again in the near future. You can get all of his stuff at Crain and Company on YouTube. Jake, thanks for coming on again, buddy.
Brother, I appreciate it so much. Y'all are doing a heck of a job. And look, if Washington doesn't work out and I'm totally wrong, I'll be the first guy to come back on here and say I was wrong. But anytime you guys need me, just holler.
If they go 7-2, expect a rack of beer that is your personal favorite to be sent to your doorstep. We'll make it happen.
Accept that with open arms.
Great to see you, buddy. Bruin Bible, we are officially